What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Weekly Dose of Dano TV, giving you the best content that you're going to find on the internet. If you stay for 10 minutes, I promise you're going to stay for the entire episode because we have Tom Murphy here, the legend that is going to help us with our own lives and to really give us the golden nuggets that we need in order to have the best mental performance and to really live out what it is that we've come on this earth to live. So thank you so much to my Positivity Posse for being here. Tom, what do you have to say to the Positivity Posse before we get started?
That's a tough one. I didn't see you going in that direction, but that was good. I was going to give you one of my favorite quotes, but I'm going to change direction on it. And I heard this some time ago, and I think it's just I don't even know where it came from, but they said that the child that is not embraced by the village will burn it down to feel its warmth. And that's very apropos for our day and age today and what's happening with young people. And I think we're in the midst of a generation that is crying for help. And, we talked briefly about the Surgeon General and his new recommendation around social media and the challenges. And at this point in my life, and I'll land on this, but this point in my life, I've done a lot of things in my life. And I think, that's the ultimate meaning of my life is what's happening to young people and shepherding them through these challenging times.
Absolutely beautiful. And the best thing about what you said is not only that you said it, but you're actually producing and performing and living out your life's purpose, which could be something that we're going to talk about a little bit later on today. For anybody that might be struggling to find their life's purpose, this might be the episode for you. Whatever it is that you're here to grab, you will get it today, because here on Weekly Dose of Dano TV, nothing happens by accident. Everything is very intentional, and we appreciate you being here live or on the replay. Look, Lou's already excited for the episode. Thank you, Lou, for being here. Thank you for dropping the hashtag Positivity Posse. And let's get started because we have so much to cover in such a little time. Thank you, everybody. So if you have any comments, questions, concerns, positive energy, leave it all in the comments. And let's get started with today's episode. Let's get it. So much for being here. We have a lot to cover today, so let's just jump right into it. With my Positivity Posse, we have to spend this time together to talk about what I think we need to hear for the week, and it's definitely about labels and everything surrounding labels. Excuse me, I have a piece of hair in my mouth. So when it comes to labels, please be careful, because that is a double-edged sword that I don't think a lot of people notice when they're going through life, right? So the label can be the same as, if you're the CEO of a company versus the janitor of the company. The label could be, hey, I'm from this part of the world. Wherever you're from, there's so many different ways that we can label ourselves and other people that we have to be conscious about, because whatever way that we do it, it will really hinder us from living out our best potential and to live our best life, right? Because if we are so encumbered and enamored with what we label to ourselves, then that is not serving us for our greatest and highest good, because it can be, depends on how you do it. So if you're just labeling yourself and other people with what's going on in the outside world, what kind of car they drive, how many followers they have on social media, you're putting these people and yourselves potentially in a box. Because if that's what you're valuing in all of your relationships, what you can gain from people and how these relationships can better, or how these labels can better your life, then you're not doing it from an authentic place. And everything that you do is going to be from a place of lack and trying to gain versus giving. And I know Tom can speak about this directly because his life has been dedicated in a life of service ever since he was a young kid. We're going to dive deep into that because his parents had a shelter where he really found the true definition of what it means to give to others. But I know we all experience that in our own lives, right? I know I do it here with Weekly Dose of Dano TV, and that's why we have had a lot of success. We have, for the Positivity Posse, we've grown to over 70,000 viewers every single month and counting and growing. But that's because everything that we do is from a place of love, right? So when it comes to labels, if we really dive deep on the inside of world and what's going on in our mindset, then that is what's truly going to give us the motivation, the drive, and the continuation to follow our dreams and our paths. Because if we start to focus on the outside world and how other people view us and the boxes that we will get put into, then that's not really a life of excellence, right? Because we're just doing it for the title, you're doing it for the money, which is not a bad thing. I'm not saying that you can't achieve all these great things, but really determine the source and the fuel of how we do it. And I know with labels, they are meant to divide us. So really be careful about how it is that we're going about in our lives. And I know I'm guilty of it. We all are, right? Because that's been our programming ever since we were young kids. Everything that we've seen, we try to connect with people. That might be another way too. We can connect with people about the labels. Where have you been? What have you done in this world? And if they don't match those standards that you're looking for, then you can really miss out on a lot of relationships and beautiful moments just by going into it with that, tunnel mindset, or just seeing, not seeing the full scope of everything that it needs to do. So just be careful with that, everybody. Like I said, I know when I've been going through this past week, as if you were here for the Tuesday 2-hour special that we had on Weekly Dose of Dano TV, absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. We had just powerhouses and amazing people, leaders in their professional field, to come on to talk about that as well. So if you want to dive deeper into that, please go check out that segment. And that was just this past Tuesday. Absolutely amazing. It was so good that I had a few people actually talk to me about monetizing that episode for 2 hours and even possibly creating an entire weekend summit out of it. So stay tuned for that, because that will be in the developments, but we're in the very early stages of that. And for now, we have to focus on Tom Murphy's story. I'm telling you, just really resilient, mental fortitude, and the epitome of what we want here on Weekly Dose of Dano TV. Not only because he is very accomplished, but he has a lot of golden nuggets that we need and may be missing to really give us that life of purpose, that life of perseverance, and to really achieve anything it is that we want to do in this world. And he's impacting the youth at anywhere from K to 12. And obviously those lessons that they learn then will be carrying on from generation to generation. So Tom is a trailblazer. He's going to come on to talk about everything that he is accomplishing and wants to accomplish in the future as well. So we have Jeanette Ramos. Thank you for dropping the hashtag Positivity Posse. Thank you for the shirt, for the compliment on the shirt. I had to match Tom's energy today with his great free hug shirt, and it's just a great. It's not even the shirt, right? It's the energy that happens when we come together. So I appreciate that, and thank you so much, everybody, for being here. And now it's time to welcome Tom Murphy onto the show. Please drop a love, a heart, anything that you got to do to raise your own vibrations, but to welcome Tom Murphy onto the show. Tom, thank you so much for being here, and let's get to it. There he is, the man.
Yeah, what's up, brother? Most of the time people don't match my energy, and I'm usually off the rails, but I've been going since about 7:30 this morning. I think I told you, and it's 9:15 at night here on the East Coast, and but I couldn't be happier to be here. I loved some of the stuff you said out of the gate. FYI, I don't usually say this. I don't think I've ever said it on a show or a podcast, but I've been in this shirt for 8 years every day. I haven't missed a day in 8 years. And it's a wonderful, wonderful story. An educator inspired me 8 years ago, so I'm not sure when I'll break the streak, but maybe someday. When you mentioned the shirt, I just had to throw that at you because I knew it would make you think twice. But let me make a quick comment because you talked about some golden nuggets. I got addicted to Jonathan Haidt's new book. I've been reading John Haidt. He's the authority on planet Earth when it comes to what's happening with our young people. He's from NYU. His partner, Zach Roush, is one of the world authorities on youth suicide. And one of the things you were talking about a few minutes ago was that label. And one thing I think people should really understand, and you can look this up, he combines these two in his new book, the confirmation bias and the prestige bias. And for all of human history, let me say it like this. I got to compete at a pretty high level with the UFC. I did the Ultimate Fighter reality TV show, and that just became my little hook and my entry into really talking with young people. And the number one question young people would ask me for the first 6 or 7 years, they'd say, "What kind of car do you drive?" They meet someone that they feel has prestige, and that's what they want to know. And that's the way it's been for all of human history. You look at the person in your village that can hunt the best, that can fish the best, that can sew the best, that has a characteristic that is worth prestige. And hopefully that person also has some moral and ethical framework that they live their life by. And younger people, this is what younger mammals do. They look at mammals a couple years older than themselves and they replicate behavior. Well, that's the way it's been for millennia. And John Haidt actually traces this back to, he believes, and don't quote me on this, but he brings up Paris Hilton. And when she came on the scene, and what happened is young people started to associate her value with likes, with comments, with posts, with eyeballs. And, we started this work in 2009 at the beginning of what John Haidt calls the great rewiring of our children. We had a play-based childhood for millennia. And in 2010 to 2015, we switched to a phone-based childhood. And read the book. I've read all of his books. I knew everything in this book. It still blew me away. It came out May 29th. I've read it twice, and I'll read a third time before the school year starts. But what happened is young people started to take this ancient structure, this prestige bias, and they started to apply it to what was happening online. Something that has almost zero value. Paris Hilton, and no disrespect, she has tremendous value as a human being, but she brings no value besides a sex tape to the marketplace. But kids started to apply that. And I didn't even see it happening. And somewhere, the first 7 years, kids would ask me, "What kind of car do you drive?" Young men. I haven't heard that in probably 7 or 8 years, not from one student. And every year I'm in front of 100,000 kids, young people, not one student in the last 6 or 7 years. Every kid I talk to today, after an assembly, they come up to me. If I have my phone, if I take a selfie, if they take a selfie, the only thing they ask today, not every kid, but a majority of our young people, how many followers you got? It's the prestige bias. And it can be devastating for young people because it really brings no value to the marketplace, except it hijacks this prestige bias. And you combine that with I said confirmation, I meant conformity bias. And Solomon Ash did a lot of work on that years and years ago. But you combine those two and you've got a real ugly cocktail.
Yeah. And, one of the things that we're going to dive into right now is we're talking about the Surgeon General's warning that just came out today, I believe, on how I can't speak, on how phones are going to be banned in certain schools. But going back to your point about social media is interesting because when I first started my freshman year in high school, we were the first class to ever use iPads for our learning methods, right? And I feel as though I was the tail end of the generation that grew up without social media definitely in front of our faces. Now, going back to what you said, these kids ask these questions and everything that they see online, they equate it to real life because that's all they've known and that's all they've grown up with. So it's interesting to see the difference in reality and what they determine to be true and what they determine to put their value on. Because if everybody's doing it inside of their generation, how are they supposed to know the difference? Even though, Tom, you and I know that all we have to do, if everybody on this world or on this planet just deleted Instagram and social media together, it has no value. But it's interesting that we say that. So, Tom, I want to get your ideas on what the Surgeon General just presented for today. And I just want to share a quick, synopsis of what it is. So it says, today, the Surgeon General of the United States right here, while social media may offer some benefits, there might be ample implication that social media can also pose a risk of harm to the mental health and well-being of children and adolescents. Social media use by young people is nearly universal, with up to 95% of young people 13 to 17 reporting a social media platform, using a social media platform, more than a third saying they use it almost constantly. So, Tom, here's my question to you. I want you to take it away. Since you work with all of these young people, how bad do you think social media really is or truly is?
Well, I got a couple of things to say about that are important. The first thing I always say to parents, because the first thing a parent wants to know is, when should I get my kid a phone? I've heard that for years. And I got a friend of mine, a guy that I've met several times and spoke to him, and he wrote a great book called Disconnected. And I love his answer. And this is the answer that gave shock value to people. When you're ready for your child to look at hardcore pornography, that's when you should get them a phone. And most parents' eyeballs will be like, what? We know today that's not as shocking as it used to be. I mean, the age that young people introduced to pornography is in the single digits now. That's the average age. That used to really shock people. But what's more shocking, and I'm going to relate this to the Surgeon General here in a sec. What's more shocking is, I don't believe you have children, do you?
No.
No. So if you were a parent and I said to you, and we'll see if you can say what 99% of parents say, after I say that and their eyeballs get big because they think of little Jimmy being introduced to hardcore pornography, which you cannot stop. Don't forget that. The pornography industry has infected cartoons and other ways to get this information to kids. You can't stop it. If there's a phone in their hand or their buddy's hands, they're going to watch it. So, but if I were to say to you, finish this sentence, think you have your own children. All I want is for my child to be
happy.
Good. You nailed it.
99. What do I win? What's my prize?
Yeah, I'll give you your prize right here. So I think this came from Jean Twenge at Stanford. She's written the definitive piece of work on a book called iGen, which is just brilliant. And every educator in America, every parent should be forced to read this book. But I believe it's in iGen. She says, when you put a phone in a human being's hand, you cut their happiness score in half. Now, just don't say anything. Just sit on that and think about that for a second. You get little Jimmy, his first iPhone at 10, 11, 12, and he opens it up at Christmas time, and you see this enormous smile on their face and the excitement, and you feel so great. But you just cut that kid's happiness score in half because of the social comparison that will take place over the next several years and what it will do neurologically with and elevate levels of anxiety and depression. And I'm not the person to speak on that. Jonathan Haidt's book, The Anxious Generation, will explain it in detail across all the Anglosphere countries, not just America. But you just cut your kid's happiness and score in half. And what are you going to do about that? You got to take it from them. And what I'm going to say to you? Good luck. Not just because they're addicted to it, because John Haidt talks about these 5 great things in his book that has caused the damage, which is social deprivation, right? I wasn't planning on talking about this. Attention fragmentation, addiction, and sleep deprivation. He talks about these are the 4 fundamental harms that are happening to young people. But when the Surgeon General talks about, and when I listened and I read the whole thing, and he talks about the content being observed, the content that kids are looking at, that's really not the problem. Content has always been out there. The internet was never really a problem. Did it expose to kids before they should have been? Yes. That's a problem. And we can talk about that. But what really has taken place, man, that people don't understand, it's almost criminal. And I'll probably get canceled for saying something like this, but guys like Zuckerberg, they should be in jail because they knew, and John Haidt explains this. I feel like I'm doing a commercial for Jonathan Haidt's book, but what he explains in the book is the variable ratio reinforcement schedules that B.F. Skinner understood. These reward schedules. You put a rat in a cage and he pushes a bar and a pellet comes out, right? You have to vary that reward. You can't do it every single time and give him a pellet. Maybe it's 3 times gets the pellet. Maybe it's 2 times he gets the pellet. Maybe it's 6 times he gets the pellet. You can't let him know that that action is going to produce what he wants. And when you look at what happens, the trigger happens, the ding, the dong, the bing, the kid, the person looks at the phone and they start scrolling. The algorithm takes over based on the content that you want, but it doesn't give you what you want when you first start scrolling. It makes you continue to scroll, and then it gives you the reward. That's the dopaminergic system that kicks in anticipation of that, and then you keep scrolling. And that's been taking place for hundreds, thousands of years, because that's the way this reward system works in our brains. But what happened, and he explains this beautifully in his book, that the kid now makes an investment. They put a picture of themselves, they comment, they make some kind of investment of their being into this stream. And then what happens? Somebody else comments on their investment. Someone else forwards their investment. Someone else likes their investment. That becomes the new trigger. And then it gets them to scroll into this variable reward system again. And make another investment. And what it becomes, man, is this endless loop that no human being, and you're a grown man with a fully formed brain, that you get scrolling and you're like, oh my God, what just happened to me? But now we're doing it with this mammal that has a half-formed brain that we think is going to control it. So I'm going to land on this so you can jump back in. The Surgeon General, I thought he did and I commend with all my heart that he's running this up the flagpole. But the real issue is not the content, right? Content's always going to be an issue. Propaganda's been out in human history. We're disseminating it faster than ever before. But it's really what's happening under the hood that has kids addicted. Yeah. And how do you stop that now?
That was going to be actually my next question, because I actually wanted to share this. Sebastian says Tom versus Zuckerberg UFC highlight. So I think you might have to give him a piece of your mind. But, awesome. We're going to take a quick commercial break, but I'm going to give you a minute to simmer on this question. So obviously in the bodybuilding industry, or, I like to use that one because that's the most accurate to what I'm about to ask you. If you try to compete and you know that everybody else in the arena is using steroids and performance-enhancing drugs, how is it that you're supposed to compete with them by you staying the natural way? And when we come back from this commercial, Tom, I want you to answer this question. If all of these other kids have these phones at such a young age because their parents are giving it to them at the young age at Christmas, how do you fight that social impact or that social dilemma that the kid that doesn't have the phone is going to incur by not having it, with the bullying and everything that goes into that? So simmer on that for a minute, and we'll be right back after a word from our first sponsors, which is Great Success. Thank you so much, Great Success, for sponsoring Weekly Dose of Dano TV. And to my Positivity Posse, thank you so much for being here and commenting live. So Tom, sit that with a minute, and here's a word from Great Success.
At Great Success, it's our job to make sure that your child succeeds in school regardless of the subject or grade level. Our tutors are trained professionals who know how to promote learning and encourage results. Whether you are looking for help with SAT, ACT prep, private and group tutoring, K-3 reading programs for your child, or educational consulting and college counseling, here at Great Success, we can help you find the right answer. Visit greatsuccess.com to learn more about our in-person and online program options. Great Success, where your child's success is our business.
Everybody, thank you for being here again. Thank you to Great Success, Mark Hoberman, for sponsoring Weekly Dose of Dano TV. And a little bit later, you're going to hear from our second sponsors, which is the Power of Choices. But just want to show this question right here, or this comment. Lou says that question is awesome. Dano, you're amazing. And hello, Tom. But the question that Lou is referring to is this, as we were just talking about, maybe you're just tuning in. Tom just mentioned the psychological and what's under the hood when it comes to social media. But Tom, when it comes to fighting that social aspect with all of these other kids having a phone and your kid doesn't have a phone, the bullying and the negativity that comes with that, how do you fight it?
Well, you know, our message hasn't changed from day one. Our message has been about empowering students. And, you know, when you look at generational cohort theory, and you know, I don't know if you ever read any of Robert Greene's stuff. He wrote the 48 Laws of Power.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he wrote
The
Laws of Human
seduction.
Yeah, Laws of Human Nature. And
Yeah.
and I think it's in Laws of Human Nature. He has this wonderful quote, and I didn't know I was going to go here, but he says something to the effect of today's generation is lazy and godless and never will be able to preserve our culture. And when you read it, you're like, oh shoot, that's the Gen Zs, just the way it's laid out. But he took it from a piece of Sanskrit from 1000 BCE. Like absolutely nothing has changed. Every generation does this. Every 22 years, there's a new cohort born. And at any given time, there's 4 generations alive at a time. And today we got the boomers, the Xers, the millennials, and the Zs. And sometimes there's one more, but they're so old, he said they don't matter. But what happens is the generation says, when I was a kid, it's like the worst thing you can do. In one of our circle trainings, I say it's this generational narcissistic shield that people hide behind. And what we do is we try and tell this generation. But let me tell you, man, there's an awakening coming. This Gen Z generation is waking up. And I know this, man, because I've been in front of almost 2 million students. I did over 500 circles this year myself. I did over 600 last year, which means for 40 minutes to an hour, I sat in over 500 circles with 15 to 20 students and I listened to them. I didn't interrupt them. I didn't tell them what I thought. I listened to them. And Socrates did the same thing. They killed him because in Athens, they said, man, you're corrupting the minds of the youth. Knock it off or you're done. And he wouldn't stop. They made him drink eucalyptus. They killed him because he understood an ancient piece of wisdom that there's really 2 kinds of intelligence, right? You have fluid intelligence and crystallized intelligence. And your crystallized intelligence will continue to rise the rest of your life, right? You'll learn stuff, you'll write it down, you'll memorize it. But your fluid intelligence just goes shoom right after your early 20s. And you don't ever really regain it, no matter how great you think you are and how smart you think you are and how creative. I mean, there are people certainly on one end of the spectrum when it comes to personality and openness and creativity, but that's different than your fluid intelligence. And when you really listen to young people today, I've talked to so many young people that are saying, we're tired of our phones. They're exhausting us. We don't want them anymore. Now, they can't get out of this addiction right now, and that's where they need our help to shepherd them. But that's really the message for 16 years. And we have full-blown classes and programs, but our message has always been about taking older kids. If there's one thing I know something about, it's the science of play. I spent the last 10 years of my life devouring everything I can on the actual human science and mammalian science of play. It's a wonderful book by Stuart Brown called Play. He says everything a mammal learns to transition successfully from childhood into adulthood, they learn in one place and one place only, in self-directed, self-controlled play. And that's where we get all of our cooperation, negotiation, teamwork, everything, giant gobs of empathy and compassion. And we have annihilated that in children. Now, I'm still going to answer your question, so I didn't forget it.
Yeah, no worries.
I'm giving you some real background because we're trying to engineer this from the Gen Xers position. And I'll just tell you a brief little story. It just happened to me about 2 weeks ago. And I haven't written or said anything on this yet. I'm with this guy and he's on his social and he sees this little kid drinking out of a beer can. It's just a funny little meme. And it says, Gen X, the last great generation before the sissies. And the guy turned to me and he said, "Hey man, look at this." And he was laughing about it. And he goes, "You work with kids. What do you think about kids and being sissified today?" And Dano, I just sat on it for a second and I looked at him and I said, "Who created that generation?" And I got way too aggressive because I started to get a little upset.
Oh
And
no, the Hulk started to come out, huh?
I did. It did. I said, "Bro, you got to go in the bathroom and you got to look in the mirror." I said, "Because you don't have the right to call kids sissies." I said, "Because you created them. And so did I." Just like John Haidt says, we overprotected them in this physical world and we underprotected them in the digital world. That's a problem. So when people say to me, "What's the solution, Tom?" I'm going to tell you what it's not. It's not me coming in and telling kids. Now, I'm in agreement with Jonathan Haidt. You got to get phones out of schools, not out of classrooms, because that 3 minutes between classes where you and I, this is the largest part of the social engagement system, where I'm looking at this 120 billion neurons that does 10 quadrillion things per second, is soaking up everything as you and I are interacting, as I'm walking down the halls and looking at people. Neurologically, neurons that fire together wire together. And that happens when you're interacting face to face, when you're embodied with people. And this is all language from his book. That's just absolutely critical that we get back to. But mammals don't learn from mammals 30 or 40 years. They're senior. Baby bear tries to play with mama bear. She does it for a little bit and then she go play with the other bears. I got mama bear stuff to do. Baby bear goes down to the river and watches the teenage bears. And when you were in 8th grade, 9th grade, Dano, there was a couple of kids that were juniors or seniors that if they told you to stand on the roof and pee off the side, you would have done it. But if you
Yeah.
also saw them, holding the door for the teacher that other kids didn't like, the disadvantaged kid, you know what you would have done? You'd have been standing right next to that kid. For me, it was a guy named Rick Yarosh. He dunked a basketball in a game in school. He was a senior. I was in like 9th grade. He smashed the backboard. He was a legend. That's our message right there. How do you take the older kids in a group and how do you get them to model the behavior? And I'm going to land on this. Peter Weinman from University of Rochester, he built Wingman Connect for the U.S. Air Force. And here's what he says. He says, young people will always have unhealthy social norms. And I know this because when I was a young person, me and my friends did really stupid things. But he says, and they prove this, and this is the latest research, if the conditions are right, young people will establish adaptive, healthy social norms within a peer network so that when other peers are struggling or other things are going wrong, the strengths within that peer network will carry those kids through. But I truly believe with all my heart that if we can empower young people, and this is tough, and people would say I'm crazy, but I've seen it with my own eyeballs. I can give you 20 stories right now, but I've seen it with my own eyeballs that if we can get the young people that are exhausted, that are waking up, and they can set the adaptive, healthy social norms for Generation Alpha, which is the next generation, we can reverse this.
Wow. And it's amazing how you fit that answer in such a short amount of time, because this is just things that people have studied over the course of many years, and we actually don't even know where the social media side is heading, right? And I just want to talk about one piece. If you are in the books, I love reading, but The Social Dilemma is also a great teacher. I don't know if you've ever seen that on Netflix.
A while ago.
But it's a great starting point to really learn what it is, how social media works, and how it's affecting our youth as well. And for everybody, I just want to share a few pictures as well, just in case you don't believe Tom is doing everything that he's saying he's doing. Here's just a few pictures so you can see Tom live in action as well. But let me share the screen and hopefully this works.
Don't embarrass me.
Let's see. All right. Well, I'm just going to share your your website instead,
Yeah,
because for some
you can
reason
share
it's not
whatever you
working.
want.
So here it is, everybody. Here's Tom's website at sweetheartandheroes.com. So he has been doing this for over 15 years. So we have an expert talking about all the things that we need to hear when it comes to the the social media side, the child development, and everything that it comes when it comes to the young people. So, Tom, I want you to talk about this for the next, few minutes. And I think this is really important to part of your story that I want everybody to learn. Maybe there might be somebody out there that's not involved in their childhood, serving the youth, or in the same arenas that we are the creatives. I know for you, you didn't always start here. And if I were to talk to that guy that was in the UFC or the MMA, and I were to tell that guy, hey, man, you're going to help millions of children and thousands of educators, you probably would have put me in an armbar and socked me and be like, you're crazy, get away from me. But you decided to act on your passion, and you decided to find your purpose in life and to go within it full-fledged, and you never look back. And here we are today. You're very successful, have impacted millions of kids, and the journey continues.
Yeah.
If somebody is in that point right now where they don't know how to find their purpose, even if it revolves around kids or not, or helping the youth, what advice would you have to give for them in order to find that purpose?
Yeah, man. When we look at, I'll make a quick comment first, and then I'll tell you what I like to tell young people. Wow, there's a lot to say there. There's these common threads that humanity shares, and we food, shelter, water, but outside of that, you're nailing one of these great common threads that weave between all of us. They connect every single person, and Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning, really illustrates, and he says that meaning comes in three forms, right? You first get your first semblances of meaning, because before the age of 10, you need to belong. You're not searching for meaning before you're 10. You might have a play personality that hopefully someone eventually someday encourages you to tie to your adult life. Unfortunately, we ruin kids, and we don't take their play history and their play personality and tie it to their adult life. But really, before the age of 10, you need to belong. But after that, we all have this program that begins to run, this search for meaning. And Franco said, and I buy this, he says, you first get your first semblances of meaning in work, in the arts. You join your first sports team, you get your first little job, it gives you some responsibility, people are counting on you. That's like the first stage of meaning. You're proud of yourself, you're earning your own money. And then he says stage two, and this is where most of us just end, is, the experiences we have in life, the people we meet, the family that we, grow into, that we have. Like, that's where most of us, between our job or the arts that we get involved in, music, our families, that's like where most of us end. I've had the very fortunate, Viktor Frankl was a two-time survivor of Auschwitz, the death camp in Poland. And he said that the greatest form of meaning comes from the attitude that we take towards the unavoidable suffering that we go through. He said the greatest meaning in life comes from the attitude that we take towards the unavoidable suffering that we go through. And I've been very fortunate because my speaking partner of over a decade, I spent 200 days a year with him. Just left him last week. His name is Rick Yarosh. September 1st, 2006, he had an IED in Iraq. 60% of his body was instantly taken from him. And if he were on here with you today, he'd say it was the best thing that ever happened to me, and I wouldn't change it for anything.
Wow. I don't want to distract you, but I just want to show a
There's
picture of
Rick
Rick right here
yeah,
as well.
Yeah, that's Rick. And you can read something like Viktor Frankl said, that's the greatest meaning in life comes from the attitude that we take towards the unavoidable suffering that we go through. And you look at a guy like Rick and you're like, you got to say that. You don't have any choice. But for him to say that he wouldn't change it if he could, because if he did, he'd have to take back all that hope he's given to other people, and it wouldn't be worth it.
Wow.
Like,
Wow.
and you want to believe that, and you want to think that you could get there someday, but you could. So the first thing I'd say, because usually one of the great things and the battle that we're in, we talk a lot about bullying, but the true war that we're in is a war against hopelessness. That's the war that we're in America today. Make no mistake about it. It's not race, gender, poverty. We have issues with all of those things, but the true war that we're in is hopelessness. We have more young people taking their lives than ever before, possibly in recorded history. And when you look at, if that's the why, then what causes hopelessness? Well, it's the same thing that causes 22 service members to end their own life every day. It's the same thing. It's this lack of meaning, purpose, or significance, and this feeling of human acceptance. Those are the two great threads that we share. So the first thing I like to say to young people, especially that are struggling, Dano, I talked to 3 dads yesterday. I'll tell you the one's name. His name is John Halligan. John lost his son Ryan 15 years ago. He's been a mentor of mine. He's taught me a lot. Another guy lost on, I'm not going to mention his name, even though it's public, but he lost his son May 5th. I talked to him for over an hour yesterday. His son was 10 years old. And then I talked to another guy as part of a university that I won't mention his name. He's running he lost his son in April of last year, who was 16, right? That's the war that we're in. And what always leads someone to a feeling of hopelessness is their struggle with their meaning, their significance, their purpose, and this feeling of human acceptance. That always leads people. That's why 22 service members end their own life every day in this country. Are there certainly other things that can help them get to the end of that rope faster? Yes, there is.
Of course.
So that's the first thing I would say, because someone listening might be really struggling with the deep meaning or significance. On the surface level, when you say, what's my purpose in life? Where am I going? I just tell young people this. I say, what's the thing that you think every human being on planet Earth should know? What's the thing that you think one log line, one sentence, one elevator pitch? Don't tell me, all the ducks in Africa and the pigeons and stuff.
I have a one-liner.
Yeah, what is it?
I would say you can be, have, and do anything it is that you want in this world.
That's your purpose right there, man, is to teach people that. For some people, it's the environment. For some people, it's piano. I don't know, it's music. But if you want to know what your purpose is in life on the surface, it's like, what do you think everybody on planet Earth should know? Because then it doesn't become a job for you anymore. Then it becomes your passion, becomes your heart.
Yeah.
And it just becomes easy. But most of the time, the conversation I'm having is not the surface one. It's the fact that a young person gets to a point so low that they can't get out because they're struggling with that meaning. And typically, it's because something awful has happened and they can't see the light. But the fact is, man, we talked about this in the pre-show. At some point, 13 billion years ago, light came out of darkness, and everything in this universe came from something that most cosmologists believe was the size of a golf ball. All the matter that you look around in the universe has been expanding and came out of something this big, but it came out of darkness. Do you realize that like 97 or 98% of everything in the universe is like dark matter or dark energy? Everything.
Wow.
We're such a small piece, but light came out of darkness. And I've seen it with my eyeballs. My buddy Rick, his hands are melted together, no ears, no nose, one leg. He said he wouldn't change it for anything.
Wow. Tom, that answer, what you just gave, perfectly deconstructs what it is that we are missing in this world. And just the fact that you were able to relate it to Rick and your own personal journey and everybody that's watching, that is kind of the epitome and what we need to boil down our essence in life, right? Whatever it is that we're struggling with, Tom just gave you the blueprint. And what did I tell you? He was going to come on here to give us the golden nuggets and everything that we need to really live our life of purpose and happiness and also peace. So, Tom, we have to hear a word from our second sponsor for today. But after that, we're going to come back and really give you guys some more of these great golden nuggets, these facts, anything that you want to call the great energy this alignment, this purpose, all the great adjectives that you can use to describe it. We're going to give you some more of it for the last third of the show when we come back. I just want to touch on a few comments. Jeanette says, passion is everything. Once you know what that is, everything comes together. Sebastian says, golden nuggets in here, viral. And then we got wow and wow again. So that's how you know we're on the right path as well. So we're going to hear a word from the Power of Choices, and we'll be right back after a word from our sponsors.
What we do is very interactive, but very, very powerful because, look, yeah, I was an educator for 30 years. I don't believe in just academic education. The lack of character education, which is what we do, changes a culture, and it doesn't take 3 months or 3 years to do it.
We are the guys that come in that will teach these kids everything that they need in order to really be the best version of themselves and to get the skills to succeed in life, no matter what life throws at them. Everybody, that was a word from our second sponsor, the Power of Choices. If you didn't get enough of this pretty beautiful face, handsomeness, then you just saw for an extra minute where we actually do the same thing as Tom, you know, in our own different ways. But we all come together as one to help the youth and the next generation to learn about mental resilience, anti-bullying, substance prevention, and everything that they need to understand, as Tom just showed me, that they can be, have, and do anything it is that they truly desire in this world. So thank you, Tom, because you're sharpening iron, sharpens iron, right? So you're helping me go out into the world to help impact these wonderful children and the next generation that needs our words of encouragement and how to actually take actionable change to make that happen. So, Tom, I'm going to ask you a fun question because I have seen when I was doing my research, you always wear the shirt. It says Mr. Incredible, and that I believe is a tribute to the Disney movie The Incredibles. So I'm going to ask you a question, but I want to hear it from your own words. If there's one superhero, because obviously you have sweethearts and heroes, right? If there's one superhero that you identify most with out of all of them, who would that be and why?
Oh, Mr. Incredible, dude. So I said I've been wearing this shirt for 8 years, almost going on 8 years every day, my free hug shirt. True story. The only time I don't wear, I haven't missed a day in it, but the only time I don't wear it and the only other shirt you'll catch me in is a pink button-up shirt, which is over this when I present to middle and high school, and my Mr. Incredible shirt. And I wear my Mr. Incredible shirt because when we do our K2 and our 3-5 assemblies, I rip off my shirt and I play old Mr. Incredible, and I bring my friend Rick, who's really, really different. And we take him on a wild ride. But you say, why Mr. Incredible? There's my buddy Rick and a man named Jason. But that's the only time underneath that. That was actually pre 8 years ago, that picture. But why Mr. Incredible? People always say, who's your favorite superhero? I certainly have some real life superheroes like Rick. There it is. But why Mr. Incredible? And I tell young people all the time, I say, number one, he's a terrible father. I don't know if you watch the movies, but he picks the table up. He screams at his kids. The new movie, he falls asleep when he's supposed to be watching his kid, but he loves his kids a whole bunch. Number two, he's not a great husband. I would argue that there was only one thing that broke Mr. Incredible, just one, in both movies, when he thought he lost Helen on the plane, Elastigirl. The next scene, he just broke him. Nothing could break Mr. Incredible, except for when he thought he lost his wife. My wife, Wendy, of 27 years, is the most important person in my life. I have 4 children, and she's more important than all 4 of them put together. That's number two, but I'm not always the best husband. And I work on that every single day. And number three, I always tell young people, who created the bad guy syndrome? And if you think about it and you think, oh, wait, shoot, Mr. Incredible did. Because in the beginning of the movie, The young man, we just talked about this. You need two things in life, meaning or purpose. The kid just wanted to be Incredible. He wanted that to be his significance in life. And old Mr. Incredible screwed it up. He said, go home, buddy. And number two, he just wanted to feel acceptance. And old Mr. Incredible threw him out of his Incredimobile and told him to go home. He was just searching for two things, human acceptance and meaning or purpose. And that young man used his superpowers, his brain, to ruin the world. Mr. Incredible could have said, hey, man, you want to polish my super boots? The kid probably would have polished a hole in his boot. And if he took him for a ride home, he probably would have changed the world forever, because that little young man would have used his brain to change the world for good. But that old Mr. Incredible screwed it up. So I'm a lot like Mr. Incredible. I'm not the best dad, but I love my kids a bunch. I'm not the best husband, but I try really hard. And Wendy's the most important person in my life. And number three, I create all my own problems.
Wow. There it is, everybody. Man, just the articulation and just the commonalities that you discovered with you and Mr. Incredible. You would think that.
Oh, that's not it, bro. That's not it, bro. The beginning of the movie, he was dealing with a guy trying to commit suicide. And where did he get strong? In the rail yard. I spent 17 years in the rail industry. You want me to keep going?
Yeah, well, I mean, that would be a whole nother episode. Yeah.
I know, he's my guy.
Yeah, but it's interesting how you said the things that weren't to his strength, even though you relate to them. But if you were to ask anybody else, they would say Spider-Man because he can catch the bad guys, or Superman because he's super strong. But it's interesting that you said all of the things that didn't make him, you know, a superhero or invincible. So I just wanted to bring that up to everybody's attention, which is absolutely amazing.
I never thought about it like that, man. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
I
of
never
course.
thought of it that way. And you know what I always say to young people is, you know, what makes a superhero? And they're like, oh, they're superpowers. And my answer is, wait a minute, the bad guys got superpowers too. And they're like, oh yeah. And so I've had a definition for 15 years of a superhero. It's just someone that's willing to do things other people aren't willing to do. Someone that's willing to do things other people aren't willing to do, like go in a cafeteria and sit with a kid that stinks. That's almost impossible for most young people. But not for a superhero. But it's why superheroes don't have a lot of friends, right? They don't have many friends.
Yeah. And I just love that too, because now more than ever, you would see probably kids making fun of them on social media and they would record it. But, you know, that's a whole nother episode that we have to talk about. But, Tom, we only have a few minutes left as well. So I want to give you, you know, your credibility and just to hear what, not credibility, but to give you your plug-in. So what is Sweethearts and Heroes? What can we look forward to in the future from them and from you, I guess, since you are the founder of it? And what can we look forward to?
Yeah, man. We turned away 100 schools last year, the year before. You know, Rick and I did 200 plus days. I'm getting ready to start for the summer. I do teacher trainings all summer on our circle practice, which is just, it'll blow you away, man, what we do in circle. It's this 400,000-year-old practice that very few people will do it like we do it. And that's not to flex. It's just, you know, when you do 500-600 a year, you just learn things from young people. Our biggest initiative outside of the presentations and the classes that we offer, the programs that we offer, we're partnering with the adventure race group Spartan. And there's a sick trailer there. You had it on the website. It'll blow you away. Joe DeSena, the owner of Spartan, we made a deal with him. Our first one is September 11th in Killington, Vermont. We're only taking 8 schools for this one, so we can get this one under our belt. But we're going to bring in hundreds of young people. We're going to train them for 2 or 3 days, to 2.5, 3 days, to present our message to their elementary students. They culminate the year after they get back from Summit with the Spartan race of their own that the high school students put on for elementary students. And then that will eventually step them into our Brave program and our Brave level classes, because that's the name of our class, is Brave. It's an acronym, and it's just a student directed youth leadership system that we put into place in schools. But we're going to do it with Spartan. The last day of this summit, the kids get to run the race with their team. And we've gotten away from human rituals. We got to get back to them. to let young people know that they're powerful and strong, and they're the ones that are going to change the world.
Wow, beautiful. So thank you so much, everybody. What did I tell you? Tom is the man as well. Just everything from the inside and out. You know, I have two quick questions for you.
Yeah, man.
Number one, do kids ever get scared of you because of how big you are, because of your size?
Well, not when you play Mr. Incredible. They love it.
Yeah, I hear that. And then we have a quick question from Sebastian as well. Question: you had a chance to go against any UFC fighter, who would you go for?
Well, I've trained with them all, man. I spent years with George St. Pierre. He's a good friend of mine. I've trained with John Jones a lot. John's a buddy of mine. I fought Rashad Evans in an exhibition fight. If I could fight one person, oh man, I try and go for the best guys. Today, oh man, that's so hard. Because I've gone between heavyweight and light heavyweight. I don't know if you want me to go old school or today.
Well, it says anybody, so it could be old school or new school.
Yeah, man. I would have loved to, Rich Franklin was a very dear friend of mine, got beat up by Anderson Silva a couple times. I would have loved to crack the code of Anderson Silva back in the day, because Chael Sonnen did it, but then he got caught at the end. And I feel like I could have done it like that, even though he would have been lighter than me. So I would have liked that challenge, because for me, it's just about the challenge. It's so I don't know. There's just I've trained with so many of those guys that, I know how I do against them. If it were live in a ring, it's a little different, but they're wonderful humans. I tell people all the time, George St. Pierre was not the welterweight champion. We trained with 50 or 60 guys every day. He would thank every person for coming to the gym. When everybody was leaving, he'd thank everybody. That's what made him a champion. And 95% of those men and women are champions because of the effort they put in and the way they inspire people to become better.
Yeah, and the discipline and the skills that you learn just going along in that sport carries on through the rest of your lifetime, which we could have an entire episode on that as well. So, Tom, seriously, thank you from the bottom of my heart, from the Positivity Posse. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here for another episode of Weekly Dose of Dano TV, giving you all the golden nuggets that you need in order to live that life of purpose, passion, and peace as well. So, Tom, any final remarks to anybody watching that you want to sign them off with?
No, just thanks people for watching and for contributing. And, we can only fix this as a community, and the community called humanity. We can't fix this mess that we're in any other way. There's no shortcuts to it. We've got to get back and commune with one another face to face, and allow empathy and compassion to grow the way it had been growing for millions of years.
Boom. So we'll leave you that with the entire weekend. Stay safe. Next week, we have David Goodman coming on. He's going to talk about his work with IDEA and how he is helping the Camden City kids help with their creative side of everything, and how videography is changing their lives as well. Lou says, thank you, Tom. I say thank you, Tom. And I just want to leave everybody with this one quote. I believe it's by Gandhi, and it says, be the change that you want to see in the world. So go out there, go be the change that we want to see in the world. Like Tom said, go sit with the people that may be considered outcasts or the ones that smell. Or don't put those labels on them. If you go out there to see their soul, then that's what you're going to expect. That's what you're going to experience. Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, Tolstoy said, everybody wants to change the world, but nobody wants to change themselves. So change yourself, and then we can do exactly what Gandhi said and change the world.
Boom. There it is, everybody. I'll see you next week for another episode of Weekly Dose of Dano. And be safe, everybody. We'll see you next week. Peace.